Lucas.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, if you will look at the study that came from the HRTPO, you would see that the poll indicated that 80% of all people polled were in favor of casino gaming. And that was a huge crowd we had for that public hearing in City Council. It was a sum total of 17 people, with one of those coming from Norfolk. So there was 8 on one side and 8 on the other side. I mean, that was a huge group that, just like you said, that came out to show the 50% who were for and 50% who were against. So in a city that's roughly 100,000 people to get 16 people from Portsmouth out to a public hearing on casino gaming, I'd say there wasn't a whole lot of interest in people wanting to oppose this legislation. But what I would draw your attention to is a study that was done by the HRTPO that says 80% of all of the people polled were in favor of casino gaming as a way of raising revenue to help with our long-term sustainable source of funding for transportation. But in addition to that, I want you to look at the information in the article that you got from the Washington Post that indicates that of the $700 million in revenue, profits, that will be realized by the casino 18-story, $925 million casino that will be built up at the National Harbor, that roughly 50% of that money is going to be coming from Virginia residents. And that's only that one venue. So if you consider that that much money is going to that one venue, just keep in account what's going up to Dover Downs, what's going up to Anne Arundel Mills, and all the other venues that people in Virginia are going to for their source of entertainment, and that being casino gaming. So roughly and conservatively, we might as well be putting $1.5 billion, and that's the lower estimate, in one of those cargo containers down at the port, and just export it out of Virginia. And Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would hope that you would look favorably upon this legislation. And I understand you may want to send it up to finance.
Yes. Committee members, if there is a favorable motion on Senate Bill 19, it will need to be referred to finance as well. Are there any questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Please.
And I read this bill, and I think it seems like, well, my first question is it by virtue of the 40% property being government-owned, does that limit it just to the city of Portsmouth?
No, it doesn't. There's one other locality, Commonwealth of Virginia, that if I'm not mistaken by the information that's in the HTPO, and help me with this, where I think it may be Leesburg. Yes. So there are 2 localities that will be eligible under this legislation as it's currently written. That's not to say that once it's in the bosom of the committee that you can't amend it. I don't mind you making a Christmas tree out of it. I don't care if you build 10%. I just want the first one to be enforced.
As I read the bill, localities is 40% of their land base non-taxable. So that would apply to the city of Lexington, would apply to Bath County, probably apply to Allegheny County as well. I don't know about how, but mine.
Did you complete your question, Senator Hughes?
I've got a couple more. My second question is, let's say we pass this bill and it passes and it's signed by the governor. What control does the city council still have over this process? Would there have to be a special use permit, or can you talk about the actual zoning?
That is correct. Mr. Rowe.
Yes, ma'am. Can you walk us through the process? If we pass this bill, what process would localities actually have to follow before they would get a casino?
It would be a very rigorous zoning process that, depending on where it's located, would have to be zoned correctly. Of course, that's a planning commission public hearing process. Planning commission then hears that, makes a recommendation to the city council. There's also a public hearing. There would be a need for a conditional use permit, which would be that same process again. So there's plenty of opportunity for both public input and for council to have the ultimate say as it relates to controls on the use permit.
Further question, Madam Chair.
Senator Peterson.
I'm looking at sort of the revenue spin-off from this, and I see on lines 1379 that there would be a tax of 20% on the adjusted gross receipts. Can you walk me through how that compares to other states like West Virginia and Maryland, what the percentages typically are? Is that higher? Is that lower?
That's about in the ballpark.
And who do you represent, by the way? I'm sorry.
I'm the city manager of Portsmouth. I did not do this study, but the study was asked for by the General Assembly, and they directed that the Hampton Roads transportation planning organization to do this study, and they have an economist, and they looked at casino gaming in the context of the whole nation. And so this fits within the parameters of what they found.
Last question, Madam Chair. I see that the revenues from this primarily are targeted at paying down the tolls, paying down the cost of the Midtown Tunnel expansion. What happens when that's paid off? And I don't know how the numbers match up, but let's say it gets paid off in 10, 15, 20 years, then what happens to the revenue?
Senator Peters, the way the legislation is written is, it was intended to help us with our long-term sustainable funding for transportation. So at whatever point, whether it's 10 years or 15 years, that the tolls are paid off in Portsmouth, particularly the Midtown Tunnel, the downtown tunnel, then the funding will revert to the transportation.
Is that in the bill? I didn't see that in the bill.
Amigo?
It's not in the bill.
Oh, that was the intent. So if you want to line amendment that says that, because the intended purpose was for the money to go into transportation.
Right.
And with a 10% going to the host locality, which means that 10% of whatever is realized will go to the city, of course, as a host locality to make sure we take care of whatever issues that may come out of this, to include increased police protection, to include also a gaming anonymous group organization, perpetual care for 1 mile radius around anything around the casino.
All right, Madam Chair, if I might, I'd like to make a motion, since right now there's no residual beneficiary under this, that we would say that it goes to the Transportation Trust Fund, or whoever.
That is a friendly amendment.
Second that.
Okay, moved and seconded that, the bill be amended to include that.
For revenues, once the toll project is paid off,
What do you say?
would go to the Transportation Trust Fund.
I accept that amendment.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, any other questions on this bill?
Madam Chairman,
Please call. Senator Pierre.
I just want to, and this may be out of order, I'm not terribly concerned, I want to say the admiration I feel for the patron, for her vociferous and tireless advocacy. She knows how I'm going to vote, but I really respect the fact that when you get something that's important.
You could abstain.
I'll second that motion.
He's not that effective.
Madam Chair, I move that we report the bill and refer to the Finance Committee as amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 19 be approved and referred to finance as amended. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No. Call the roll.
Senator Colvin? Senator Martin?
No.
Senator Ruff? Senator Peterson?
Aye.
Senator Barker?
Aye.
Senator Vogel? Senator Miller?
Aye.
Senator Deeds?
Yes.
Senator Black?
No.
Senator Evan?
Aye by proxy.
Senator Reeves? Senator Garrett? Senator Famola?
Aye.
Senator Cosgrove?
No.
Senator Locke?
Aye. Okay, the bill is approved and referred to finance.
Thank you.